Have you ever gotten confused about your identity or who you really are as a person? If so, you may be experiencing what psychologists call an identity crisis, and we're here to explain some concepts that can clear this up for you. The first one is a developmental psychologist named Erik Erikson. He listed 8 stages of psychosocial development that last from birth until death. The fifth of these stages is called identity versus role confusion. This stage holds the very definition of identity crisis. Teenagers encounter infinite choices among many values in life. Once they have the self-confidence to choose which of these values to ascribe to themselves, they will have achieved identity. However, if they haven't succeeded in choosing among them, they will experience role confusion and try to blend in with the rest of the crowd, as opposed to going against it. Do you get it? If not, here's an example that might help. Take for example this fellow here named Bob. Bob is trying to figure out who he is, what he likes doing and what he doesn't like doing, what he believes in and what he doesn't believe in. And he does this by exposing himself to these different options. Maybe options that involve him choosing his future career. If Bob figures out who he really is, he builds his own identity and finds his place in society. For example, he realized that he loves cooking. Since he loves it, then he'll go with that and choose to be a chef. But if Bob doesn't, he becomes confused and decides to go with the flow. He'll probably just do what his friends are doing since he doesn't know what he wants. Identity crisis doesn't just stop there. It can be further explained by Carl Rogers' idea of self-concept. Now, self-concept is the image of yourself that develops from your interaction with the important people in your life. You have an idea of the person you want to become, your ideal self, but you become frustrated when your real self does not match with your ideal self. In this case, we know Bob to be a shy and awkward boy. He watches people and wants to become just like his older brother, a popular basketball player. But seeing that he is awkward and shy around people, Bob gets frustrated because the person he really is different from the strong athletic person he desires to be. Surprisingly, a person's sense of being male or female can also be a root cause of identity crisis. Your gender, which is different from your sexual characteristics, can be influenced by several biological and environmental factors. Some people experience this kind of identity crisis, since they don't know which gender to identify with. So let's say, even if Bob were born with the primary organs of a male, which is a biological factor, Bob can still be exposed to environmental factors that make him identify with females more. If Bob has grown a liking to taking care of the house or wearing women's jewelry and clothing, Bob might start questioning what his gender really is, and thus undergo identity crisis. And lastly, social identity theory may also come into play when dealing with an identity crisis. A crisis can come about when your view of oneself as a member of a particular social category is different from who you really are. Cultural identity is a big factor within your social identity. Let's say Bob was half Filipino and half Chinese. On one hand, being Filipino has its own values, lifeways, and traditions. On the other hand, he must abide by his Chinese values as well. There may be times in life when he must identify with only one culture, or when he has to juggle both. Either way, Bob can't choose which group to identify with, and thus goes through identity crisis. So, how can we solve the problem of identity crisis? Doesn't one experience identity crisis when he feels lost or something is lacking in his life? Well, I'll give you something to ponder on. Have you ever heard of the term self-actualization? If not, I'll tell you about it. We have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a theory that states that one must satisfy his so-called lower needs to become a fully functioning person. First, we have our physiological needs, then our safety and security. After that, we must feel love and belongingness, and then we end up with our esteem needs, which is the desire for competence, approval, and recognition. After all of these, he can obtain self-actualization. Simply put, self-actualization is the attainment of one's full potential. Considering Bob, in order to overcome his identity crisis, we would need to have his basic needs satisfied first. Then he must be surrounded by caring, understanding people. After that, he'll develop new ideas and strive to become a better person. By the time he has achieved self-actualization, he has found his identity. Aside from this, Bob should be around people that give him unconditional positive regard given without any strings attached. With this, he will be given the freedom to explore things and get to know himself and what he likes. With a positive support group, he'll be encouraged to do things without any hesitation or doubt. Identity crisis may seem pretty bad, but it's not. People just have to explore aspects in their lives and be open to new things to discover who they really are.